clearly this is the best stage, right? I think we can all agree it's the best stage. Thank you, madam. And so when you're at a wedding, and there's always this table that's having more fun than you, well, we need this to be like the fun table, right? So just to welcome Jayne properly, what I'd like us to do is like on the count of 3, just do like a massive belly laugh. Everyone out there will be looking into us to go, I wish I was at the creativity stage. Are you with me on this? One person is, so you ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Yeah, all right. So thank you, Jayne.
Cringe.
Thank you. It was cringe, right? So thank you. Tom's done the intro. So Jayne Andrews here is the marketing director at Fentimans and former marketing director at Carnival Cruise Lines in Australia. Then a stint of director of brand for Carnival in the US in Miami. So Jayne, what on earth brings you to Hexham?
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird route that I took to Hexham. I did 15 years working for ad agencies, and that was London, Sydney. Got to Sydney, and whilst I was agency side, then ended up getting a role as marketing director for Carnival Cruise Line. So very different for me, never worked in the travel industry before, did that for 6 years. And then in 2019, I was asked to go to America to run the brand for North America for Carnival. So everybody knows what happened after 2019. Things went a bit dark. So I was running the brand for a cruise line in the US during COVID. Couldn't have got better. So kept the brand going through that really dark time, and then as COVID started to lift, relaunched the brand across North America. Amazing campaign, but I will have to tell you, working in corporate America during that time nearly killed me. So I decided after that I needed a bit of a change of pace. So my husband and I decided to come back to the UK, and we wanted to go somewhere that had oceans, countryside, and a job. So after landing in Hexham of all places, fortuitously, I found there was a soft drinks company just down the road. And I took the role there 2 years ago. So it's been I have no soft drinks experience except for the last 2 years. So an unusual journey there.
Quick show of hands. Hands up if you know where Hexham is. Ooh.
Oh, a few.
So they'll say what? So a quarter. So Jayne, where on earth is Hexham?
So
you painted a picture of oceans, mountains, countryside.
Yeah.
Talk
So
to me.
a small market town about 30 miles outside of Newcastle. So the brand has been based in Hexham for 120 years, and we have a tiny team there. There's 30 of us all up in that office, and as this says, and we export all over the world to 70 countries. Yeah.
120 years of soft drinks expertise, and boy, these guys know how to make a ginger beer, right? If you haven't tried their ginger beer, you need to try their ginger beer. So what's big for Fentimans? What are the challenges for you coming from Miami to Hexham? What's the big thing?
The thing that I think probably won't surprise most people in this room is that it doesn't really matter what size company you work in marketing in. I've definitely seen that my challenges are exactly the same. I start the year with a brand plan, and then you have, particularly in an owner-managed company, because I'm in an owner-managed company, you can have a great plan at the start of the year, but things are very changeable, and a lot of what can be done is based on gut, not plan, if the owner is around. And the company's owned now by Eldon Robson, who's the great-grandson of Thomas Fentiman, who started it in 1905. And it's his baby, it's his brand. So one of the challenges there, I guess, is even with the best laid plans, you can get a lot of opinions. And it was kind of the same when I worked at Carnival Cruise Line, because the owner was still quite involved. Right. And you also have the challenge between, like with any retail business, the short and the long term. Particularly now I'm doing more brand building work for Fentimans. It's getting the CFO to realize that the investment I'm putting in now isn't going to make the tills ring at Tesco tomorrow, and that they need to hold their nerve a little bit, and it takes time to get there. And I think that's the challenge I find everywhere I've worked is it's easier to put the price promotion on and get the immediate hit, But as I explained, those price promotions are kind of like the cocaine of marketing. Like, they just can't stop doing them. But if they would just, take a beat and trust a bit more and let things mature, the brand work will win in the end.
But that's so we're going off script now, Jayne.
Sorry.
That's quite interesting. That agility and the sort of resilience that you need when your data is met with opinion.
Yeah.
That takes a bit of. We all get that feeling, right?
Yeah,
We've all had it. So tell me how you navigate that.
I think you have to fall back on the customer as much as you can. What does the consumer want? A recent example was last year. I developed a new brand campaign for Fentimans, and it was a bit of a left field thing for the brand to do. We developed a brand character called Fentiman, which we launched just before Christmas, and we've done a national campaign. But there was initially quite a bit of resistance to doing that because it looked different from the competition. That line, everyone loves that. So rather, as I was getting faced with a bit of subjectivity on that, the best way to combat it was like, this is your view, but let's think about what our consumers think of this idea. And it's not rocket science. We ran some research. We got some of the consumers in the room. We ran the idea past them, and I was able to go back to the business and say, this will not damage your brand, and I've got proof to show that.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot to damage a brand. I mean, if VW are still going after the scandals they've had, right, it takes a lot to damage a brand. But you also, just sort of replayed you talked about marketing being the voice of the consumer in the business, just as sales are the voice of the customer, and finance is the voice of the shareholders, right? But you've got to champion your people inside that business.
Yeah, and you just have to speak a little louder, I think, sometimes when you're in marketing.
Yeah.
I'm only 5 foot tall, but I try and I speak very loud in our business. They know I'm there.
I have no doubt. So you touched on the new campaign. The Fentiman is a beautifully shot campaign. I think you work with a Northeast agency on that. But tell me a bit about how being based in Hexham, or how your brand identity that obviously leads to that work. How does that be shaped by being in the Northeast?
So it's interesting, like I mentioned earlier, we're sold in 70 countries around the world. And when I first joined the business 2 years ago, I felt that we'd lost a little bit of our heritage. I think in the appetite to grow and become global, we were trying to almost fake that we were bigger than we were, to get the confidence of the distributors we wanted to work with us. And there was nothing wrong with that. At that stage of growth, we needed to be like, we're bigger, we're capable, we can do this. And I think what had been lost is that a lot of other companies that we compete with can have to kind of make up heritage or make up a brand story. But we've got really good stories, and I think we'd stopped telling them because we were trying to say, oh, we're not based in Hexham actually, we're a big company. So I've tried to go back a little bit to what makes us unique, and what makes us unique is the ginger beer that we sell now is the ginger beer that we had in 1905. I'll bore you with a short story, but Thomas Fentiman, the reason he started the company was somebody owed him some money in 1905 and they couldn't pay him back, and the security for the loan was actually a ginger beer recipe, and the guy never paid him back. He got the recipe, made the drinks, and the rest is history. I'm sure there's a bit of romance around that story. It wasn't quite like that, but that's the story of how the brand started, and we still make the drinks in exactly the same way, except with a bit more technology as we did in 1905. And the whole craft thing, we should talk about that. Yeah. The flavors are made in our office in Hexham, and they're drunk in Albania, Brazil, USA, Australia, everywhere. And that craft story is super relevant now, and consumers want to hear that.
Well, I think that came through. So when my team, we're doing some work, Jayne is a client of mine, when we did some work with, doing some work with Fentimans, Jayne hosted us all, they invited us all to Hexham, and the pride that the whole team have in the way this product's produced, the way it's brewed, the way everyone talks about the product. I think that comes through in the communications. I think you're basing it on something true and authentic.
And you said earlier about the character that we've developed. Probably not a lot of you have seen it. We launched quite low-key before Christmas, but we're going to have 3 bursts of above the line this year. And we've developed this character, Fentiman. He's actually a puppet. He's a real puppet. He's that big. He's the same size as our 750 bottles.
Same size as you, Jane.
Yeah, shut up. So he's the same size as a bottle of drink. And he's made of wood. He was actually handcrafted by the team that work on some of the Aardman characters. Handcrafted in wood, and his whole little outfit, each part of his outfit is actually a Pantone colour of one of our drinks. And it was almost like we wanted to bake in a story with that character so that he would portray the craft of the brand as well. So whilst it's not immediately obvious when you look at an ad, hopefully when you look a little bit closer, you'll see that it's a good representation of what we do.
That attention to detail and all those details. So we talked about the ad you've created. You've created that, may I be so bold as to say, with Drummond Central. They've done
Drummond Central,
yeah, with Drummond Central, but that's a northeast Newcastle-based agency. How, and I think that's the first work they did with you.
Yes.
So tell me a bit about how you chose them and whether, as a Newcastle-ish based business, was geography even a consideration for you?
I think when you have agency relationships, to me, the relationship bit is key. I like to work with people that I like working with. Really nice people. I have to speak to them every day. I need to like them as a team. Exceptions.
Except me,
and the truth of it is, when I first arrived up in the northeast, I needed a job. So I looked around and said, who's doing good work? And one of the companies that was doing really good work in the northeast was Drummond. They were doing great work for Bet365, Greg's. And I was like, oh, these guys are awesome. Had a coffee with them, give me a job. They didn't have a job. But when I saw how brilliant the work was and how great the people were, it stuck in my head. And I thought, well, wherever I land in the northeast in my permanent role, I'll probably give these guys a shout, because they gave me the time of day when I didn't have a job. They're doing brilliant work and they're nice people. And I think as well with creative work, I still like to sit in a room with people. When you're looking at concepts, when you're giving feedback, I prefer to have a bit of a relationship rather than do every single meeting on Teams. The other thing is, from a practical perspective, we're quite a small brand and we don't have massive budgets, and I don't really want to be sending 200 quid on a train fare to get to London for meetings. So I'd rather put that money into the creative and production. So there was a lot of things, but generally the work was great. Irrespective of where they're based, their work is awesome.
I totally agree. I think that the quality of work isn't constrained by whether someone's working out of Shoreditch or not. It's different. And just to summarise some of your points, play them back. I think you talked about relationship building. They understood you as a human behind your job title, because you'd spent some time with them before. They invested effort and time ahead of you having anything for them. They were generous in that respect, and they understood you, right? And that's not that hard to do, right? That's not about having massive budgets as an agency to push yourselves out there. It's about connecting on a human level with another human.
Yeah.
So, again, I don't want to put words in your mouth here, Jane, but I'm guessing that you would say that that you don't need to have the big swanky London agencies to do great work. But what would you say to people perhaps whose default is they go to a London agency? Certainly when in some of the work that I do, people assume, whereabouts in London are you, Gareth? Well, I'm not, I'm in Leeds. And some good stuff happens outside London. So what would you say to brands like that?
Well, I think, when it comes to growing a brand like Fentimans, the main thing is about, it's actually going back to the marketing fundamentals. I don't think geography comes into it. You need to know what the brief is. And the brief for growing Fentimans brand is, we need to work out what our distinctive assets, which we know is our bottle. Even though we're developing drinks in cans, the bottle is what people know about the brand. Distinctive assets, what is unique about us, the craft, and how do we tell our stories to stand out? And like a lot of categories, there was a complete sea of sameness. Everybody wanging on about, botanicals and natural and this. We were doing it as well. So just trying to say, how do we cut through? How do we do something that's differentiating? So I think the key thing is getting that brief right, and where the agency is based, it sort of becomes irrelevant.
Yeah.
And then, finding an agency that understands that brief. But also I think maybe the little bit of secret sauce with Drummond Central is because they are based in the Northeast as well as us, they had a real passion for almost like the underdog brand, and that, and that real Northeast pride. And when I told them a little bit about Fentimans, that I was like, the UK is less than 50% of our business. Some of those countries I mentioned earlier, our second biggest market is the Netherlands, our third biggest is Chile, I think Albania could be next. And when you explain to a Northeast-based agency, this is what this cool little brand is doing around the world, they have a sense of pride as well for the business.
Yeah, so they're sharing in your
vision.
Your pride,
you want to punch out there.
Yeah, love it. So the location of offices shouldn't be a section on the brief, should it?
No, exactly.
So, sort of getting towards the end, in a more general term, Jayne, what advice would you give then to? And there's going to be a lot of agencies maybe in the stage, in the room here, but what should they be doing to get on CMOs' radars like yourself?
Be kind to us when we need a job. That was probably no. I think it's really hard because I probably get approached by agencies even ahead of this. I had 100 emails coming in my inbox. So a lot of it, I have to say, is about luck a little bit and about timing, because everything goes in cycles. And I had, before this event, lots of people emailing, do you want a coffee, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I work with Drummond Central, we've just launched a campaign, and I think there needs to be a bit of an awareness when people are approaching you that unless you can see that the work is shit, this is probably not the time to approach me because I'm quite happy with these guys, and I'm not going to flip-flop campaigns over the next 2 years. I'm going to stick with one thing. And I think also understand the size of the brand that you're pitching towards. I do have agencies that say that they're happy to work with a smaller brand, and everybody knows what smaller brand means. It means not much budget. And you go through the motions and you take the time, you give a brief, you do some work, and then when it comes down to it, they're not happy with your budget, even though you've been transparent up front. And I personally find that quite frustrating because it's sort of like we're all kind of wasting each other's time. And I don't know, maybe I'm different to other marketing directors. I'm very transparent with my budgets. I don't have a secret pot under my table. I'm quite happy to share my spreadsheet and say, that's the lot, mate. Like, that's what we got. And you get that bit, and that's the rest of it. So I think just don't mess people around. Be transparent.
Yeah, love that.
We're getting waved at.
Okay, yes. I was on it. So look, to wrap up then, I think totally agree. Transparency. What one piece of advice? So we've given some agency people a piece of advice how to get on Jayne's radar. What about brand teams? What about marketers? What advice? If you're starting out your career again, Jayne, what's the final piece of advice you'd give yourself?
Actually, don't be put off by people who say that you can't work in an industry you don't have any experience in. Most of my jobs, I've had to push for it, but most of my jobs I've had no experience in those industries before. And actually coming into something with a different industry lens can help you see things in a more unique way, rather than this is how we've always done it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, and as employers, actually just having the
open-mindedness,
to see that, right? Because otherwise, you're all going to get this homogenous stack of everyone doing the same stuff. Yeah. And on that bombshell, everyone, everyone to give like a best wedding table round of applause and cheer for Jayne.
Not again.